Life Audio.
Where are all my people pleasers at? Yeah, I see you raising your hand there. Hey, this is Heather Creekmore. You're listening to the Compared To podcast, and today I'm talking to Joyce Campbell about a topic that is relevant to so many of us. Why do we say yes when we mean no? What is behind our people pleasing, or as Joyce calls it, oh, this is a tough word, subjugation. Yikes. Is that really what people pleasing is? Subjugation? Today we're going there. We're looking at all the aspects of our people pleasing and yes man or yes woman tendencies. And we're going to talk about what's behind that, where it came from, and how damaging it really is to us. So I'm glad you're here for the show today. Hey, we are finishing up an awesome 40-day journey. Group coaching has started. If you want to be part of that, there may still be a space for you. But most importantly, I hope you have your calendar marked for January 7th when the next 40-day journey begins. You can go to improvedbodyimage.com and find out all about how to sign up and make sure you save your spot. I can only take 100 women in January, so save your spot for the January 40-day journey. Now let's get to today's episode. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel His love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Joyce Campbell, thanks so much for being on the Compared to Who show today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Heather. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you sent your book. I think you were sending it to my husband. He saw the title of it and was like, yeah, I think you would like this. And so it caught my attention immediately because you use a word that I've heard of the word, of course,
Right.
but I've not heard it used a lot. And the word is subjugation.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes.
what a powerful word, right? Like we talk about people pleasing and approval, but subjugation, whoa, that's like next level.
Definitely. Subjugation in the clinical sense is one of the major ways of thinking and behaving that can damage a life. It's a very serious condition.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in your book you were a little bit, I guess, gentler in your titling with Dare to Say No.
Right.
But to think about like our inability to say no. All those times we say yes when we meant to say no. Right? To think about that as subjugation is pretty fascinating.
And it really often begins when we're children. If our parents were very critical, if we happen to grow up in an alcoholic home, and we heard over and over again, perhaps things like, you are just not very smart, you will never amount to anything, you cannot think the way you should, you were a mistake. All of those things lay a foundation for the neuronal pathways in our brain to begin to be negative. And when we hear them over and over again, they become deeply embedded in our brain. And then we turn into doormats. We can. Absolutely. Because if we weren't meant to be born, for example, then why am I here? I'm just taking up space. I think they're right. Thoughts like that penetrate our thoughts and our distorted thinking.
Mhm.
And yet that's what's been programmed into the brain. And over time, we take it into the adult world. And for fear of abandonment or retaliation or rejection, we tend to say yes when we mean no.
Mhm.
And then the self-talk goes into these patterns that we automatically default to because they were already laid in our brain, embedded deeply. And so it's a very serious condition. It can actually destroy a life.
Mhm.
The success that we were meant to be, the person that we were created to be, may never come to life.
Mhm. Yeah. Does it have to be that harsh, Joyce? I mean, is it because I
Well,
coach women all the time, and I don't know that their parents actually even said anything,
right.
that cruel. I know a lot of women
Mhm,
have heard things that
mhm,
hurtful, and
mhm.
whew, that's hard stuff. But I
Absolutely.
feel like a lot of the women I talk to, it's more subtle than that.
Well,
You know?
and
Go ahead.
if we were raised in Christian homes, or maybe even just highly moral homes,
Mhm.
um, there can be the unspoken message of you're to be a good little girl and
Mhm.
say yes to
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh,
And so that's very much on the other end of the spectrum.
yeah.
But it's just as powerful in many cases.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that one really hits home for me. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of the clients that I talk to too,
Mhm.
it's what does it mean to be a good girl, right? Or to be good or
Right.
successful, right? And I think maybe subjugating slash people pleasing slash looking for approval
Mhm.
because that's who I am. I am
Right.
the good girl. I am the
That's
perfect
right.
one. I'm the one
That's
that does
right.
things well. And so I have
Absolutely.
to, if you want me to volunteer, yes, I will
Yes.
volunteer. you
Yes.
know, and I will make sure that like I look good when I'm doing it and that my kids
Mhm.
look good and that my
Right.
house looks good if you come over. And it's a lot of pressure.
Oh, tremendous performance pressure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was another thought that I had about that. And I'm not coming up with a clinical name right now, but it's basically an unspoken statement or demand in the family that when we go out, we're going to look perfect
Mm, yeah.
and we're going to sound perfect. We're going to treat others perfectly, and on and on
Right.
and on.
Right. Right. I mean, it's the fight all the way to church. And then you get out
Right.
of the game faces on, people.
That's right.
Right?
That's
Smile as you
right.
walk in. I mean, I've heard that story over and over again. And
Absolutely.
they have lived that a little bit too.
Understood.
So what's the difference? I love how, you kind of distinguish there's subjugation, there's people pleasing, and then there's also like self-denial, which is a biblical concept, right? Like
Right.
it shouldn't be that I'm
Which,
always saying, yes or no. Like there's
right.
a two sides to the spectrum, right? Like, no, I just want to please
Absolutely.
me. I just want to do what's good for me.
Right.
Fill out
That
what the
would,
what the
that,
difference is there.
well, saying no continually would be abuse
Mm,
of your no.
mhm,
And basically, what it boils down to, Lord, what would you have me do in this situation? Before we give any knee jerk yeses,
mhm,
we need to pray and ask the Lord, what do you think? What is your will in this situation? And also, when we're called upon to do something, lead a committee or just be part of a meeting, whatever, um, we need to be able to freely give it. If we have a problem with it, but we deny the problem, we're going to wind up resenting it and being angry. And anger is the major symptom of
mhm.
subjugation. So there's a lot involved. We need to ask, what all would this call for? How many hours of involvement? How many times do I need to show up for XYZ? So that we have an educated reference point to come from.
Yeah.
No knee-jerk guesses. They get us into trouble so many times.
Well, I'm guessing, Joyce, that you've had some experience in this arena, aside from just counseling people. Most of the time, those of us who write books about things that we have walked through. Can you share just a little bit about, why this was an important topic for you?
Oh, wow. Well, when I was a child, I was sexually molested, not by anyone in my immediate family, but someone in the extended family. And when I went back to grad school, and in one of my internships, this subject came up. And I, until then, didn't know it was a mental health issue. And so I started studying it. And as I went into my private practice, I was astounded at all the people that have had the same issue and how it has damaged their lives. And again, we're all on the subjugation spectrum somewhere. And it may be to one person, for example, a husband, or it may be to, we can even subjugate to our children. If, for example, both parents work and are extremely busy, then we can easily subjugate to a child and give them everything they want and always be building their ego, which unfortunately most often leads to entitlement. And then you have a whole nother.
You have a little narcissist.
Exactly. So it's, again, a very serious condition.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So if you can kind of look back on childhood and say, yes, one of my parents was controlling. Is that kind of a immediate flag of, okay, perhaps subjugation is something you deal with? What would you look for there? What?
Even a critical parent. I can remember again way back when in elementary school, learning how to address an envelope.
Okay.
So the first one I did for homework, and again, there's a learning curve, right? But the address was a little bit too high up on the envelope. And I didn't get, oh, good job. You did this and this correctly. It was, where are you going to put the stamp? You've done this incorrectly. Even those small things leave a mark. See, I remember it to this day as clearly as if it were today. So I loved it when my first grandchild, when he was old enough for us to decorate Christmas cookies together. He was so cute. He was doing one, and I have wrestled with perfection myself. And so he was decorating, and I said, oh, that's good. What about if, and he said, Nani, I'm learning. Good for you.
Stop Nani in her tracks there.
That's right. It was great. So absolutely.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the women that listen to the show and that I work with are dealing with body image issues. And that's the theme of this show. And I hear the stories over and over again of women who, like your envelope addressing situation, can recount, the time that mom told them,
Sure.
that they needed to lose weight, or the time mom put them on the scale and said that number was not right.
Right.
Or the
Right.
time that they, zipped up a dress that used to fit and mom said, why doesn't that fit anymore? You can't eat again until that fits. I mean, these kind of stories, I think, are pretty prevalent
Horrible.
around
Yes.
these issues. Is that something you've observed for women with body image issues that you've seen in your practice?
Yes. And the self-talk that I've already mentioned, it's that running monologue that people with body image have trouble with. And until those pathways are removed and new ones are put in terms of, if you think in terms of how the Lord, how he sees us, I'm the apple of his eye. He loves me. He gave his life for me. So to replace those over time, if we're consistent, and in the book, it gives you steps to do that deliberately and systematically, then those negative pathways die because of disuse, which is such a cool thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the renewing of our mind. I believe that fits in that category.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I love that. So I just want to make sure that we're saying it clearly enough so people hearing can be encouraged. So Joyce, you're saying it is possible to stop having those negative thoughts.
Absolutely. And that's what the Lord wants for us. He wants freedom for us from those horrible tapes.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You mentioned something that caught my attention a little bit ago, and that was anger. So when my husband and I first ended up in counseling, it was by accident. I've told this story on the show before. He was in seminary and we were participating in a kind of a leadership conference for pastors and their wives that were getting ready to get out of seminary and, go into full-time ministry.
Right.
And part of the conference was 6 hours with a biblical counselor.
Good.
And I was like, Joyce, I could not wait because I was sure that my husband needed those 6 hours with a biblical counselor. And I was just so happy to finally get him in with the counselor. And we get there, and apparently I had some things to work on that I had no idea I had to work on. And the counselor just kept redirecting the conversation to me every time, which was very confusing at first.
I bet.
And he asked me this question. And I mean, Joyce, I am sitting there with a big old smile on my face. I'm the happiest person you'll ever meet. Smile, smile, smile. And he's like, why are you so angry?
Wow.
And I was confused because I was like, what do you mean angry? I'm the happiest person you'll ever meet. I'm smiling. Like, I'm not, I'm not in this anger posture. Like, I'm expressing to you my happiness. And it kind of changed my life because I realized and we were in and out of counseling for about 10 years, kind of realized that I was never allowed to be angry. That wasn't my role in the family.
Yes.
There actually wasn't enough space for me to be angry because that was kind of taken up by others.
Yes.
And it was life-changing. When you mentioned anger, how does that connect to these issues?
When we behave in a subjugated manner, we put everybody else's preferences, opinions, desires ahead of our own. And so we don't realize it, but we're accumulating anger. We are disrespecting our integrity. We don't act congruently with our thoughts. And so there can be a lot of self-loathing. We can hate ourselves, disrespect ourselves, and others. because we think they've put me in this situation. And if I don't say yes, I'm going to be rejected and left out of the group or divorced or whatever the case might be. So the anger is usually I can see when I do an intake, when I get a basic idea of what they're in counseling for and blah, 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 you can almost see a brittleness about them. They're so full of anger that it could break any moment. And that's what happens. We can maintain the subjugation for so long, and then something will trigger anger, and people might look at us as, who are you? You're always so compliant and ready to fill in for whomever or do this job for whomever. And, you're being disrespected. And it's clear that they don't respect you because of their behavior toward you. They can leave you out of the loop on important matters. They can exclude you from different social activities. The list can go on and on.
Yeah. So we can only take it for so long.
That's right.
And it takes a toll on our physical bodies as well.
Oh, the
right?
mind-body connection, the anxiety, the depression cause all kinds of physical problems. Just migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, all kinds, heart palpitations, you name it. There can be a definite emotional and mental connection.
Yeah. Well, this has been so helpful, Joyce. I think it would be great if you would come back so we can kind of talk about maybe the more hopeful side of this, right? We've kind of talked about the ways this hurts us.
Right.
But there is a way out. There is a way
Absolutely.
through.
Yes.
So if you're listening or watching today and you have been the people pleaser, you're the yes girl, you're the good girl, you're the perfectionist, still trying to keep everything together, trying to get it all right. Sure, you can do it all, carry it all, handle it all. We come back next time and we're going to talk about kind of how to break free from subjugation.
Right. I would be happy to do that.
Great. Thanks so much. And thank you for watching or listening today. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.